Libraries, parks, homelessness, and public safety. San Diego's mayor outlines how he wants to spend the city's money in the year ahead. Plus, San Diego-based sailors return home after doing something the military hasn't done in 4 decades.
80% of the fentanyl seizures that occur along the southwest border are in our district. So this is a problem for San Diego.
A new approach as prosecutors get more aggressive in combating a dangerous element in the opioid crisis.
Our closest bus stop, we just passed it. It's 1.2 miles, is that right, you guys? I think it's 1.2 miles away from the school, and they would have to walk along this road.
And as families embrace school choice in Vista, getting there is a concern. The challenge and the impact of putting more miles on the road. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego's priorities for the upcoming budget year are on display as Mayor Kevin Faulconer unveils his spending plan. KPBS reporter Andrew Bowen shows us where the $3.8 billion would go.
The mayor released his proposed budget here at the construction site of a new library in Mission Hills. He says these are the kinds of neighborhood amenities that his budget prioritizes.
This is a symbol for what we can accomplish when we put our neighborhoods first.
Faulconer managed to close an expected deficit by dipping into some reserve funds and carrying over unspent money from the current fiscal year. He's not proposing any changes to library hours, and this branch here is set to open with full staffing next year. Cuts to arts and culture funding were modest, not nearly as serious as some advocates had feared. The mayor says growth in the economy is making things easier.
Our city is better equipped than ever before to clear any financial hurdles that may be placed in front of us. And we've been forced to do some belt tightening. But the bottom line is that the core services San Diegans rely on won't be affected.
One area where Faulconer wants to cut spending is police overtime. SDPD officers are due for a big raise come July 1st. Chief David Nislight is banking on that more competitive pay package to bring back more officers into the department.
For the first time, this department will actually have a marketing plan. We're in the process of bringing that firm on board as we speak. So that will really allow us to reach out and attract the very best and the very brightest San Diegans and bring them to the San Diego Police Department.
Now, the city's independent budget analyst will be going through this spending plan with a fine-tooth comb. The City Council will hold budget hearings next month ahead of a final vote in June. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
LA is declaring victory over the Trump administration after a ruling by a federal judge. The city sued because the Justice Department withheld millions of dollars in law enforcement grant money. The reasoning was because the administration did not agree with local immigration policy. Attorney General Jeff Sessions laid out new requirements in order to receive the funds. Today's ruling states the federal government did not have the authority to set those conditions. More than 250 organizations are urging immigration officials to reverse a policy that makes it easier to detain pregnant women. In a letter to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they argue that the policy change endangers lives. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has more.
In 2016, the U.S. decided that pregnant women should not be kept in immigration detention except under extraordinary circumstances, and that they should instead be released on parole. But now, Immigration and Customs Enforcement says it's not going to give pregnant women that kind of special treatment. Victoria Lopez is a senior staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union, which is leading the call to action.
The policy change has been really just another cruel and inhumane turn by this administration and this agency, putting women at completely unnecessary risk.
The letter cited cases where pregnant women suffered miscarriages and other health problems in detention. Immigration officials say they made the change to comply with President Trump's call for tougher enforcement of immigration laws. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
2 more cities in Southern California are distancing themselves from the state's sanctuary law. Last night, the cities of Orange and Newport Beach passed resolutions supporting federal law over the California Values Act. The law prohibits the sharing of information of undocumented individuals with federal law enforcement. A total of 9 local governments have passed similar resolutions. The San Diego Board of Supervisors will meet in a closed session next week to consider doing the same. A small border town in southern Texas is seeing some of the 1,000 National Guard members ordered to help with border security. One of the city leaders in Roma, Texas, says the troops are just doing their job and that they've been in the town for similar missions in recent years.
The first time we have National Guards in our town, they probably get sent down here every other year. So they're here to help out the Border Patrol in securing the border. I haven't really seen them out in the streets. They're not in the way of anything. All we want to do is just continue living our border life and continue training with our neighbors in Mexico.
Yesterday, Governor Jerry Brown announced he will agree to President Trump's request and assign 400 National Guard members to help with border surveillance. Thousands of San Diego-based sailors are back home after a 3-month deployment. The group returned aboard the USS Carl Vinson this morning at NAS North Island. The Vinson made several stops in the Western Pacific, including Hawaii, Guam, and Malaysia and Vietnam, which was the first time a U.S. aircraft carrier had visited the country in 40 years. A push by Democrats to flip the 49th congressional district is proving to be a challenge. A new poll conducted by Survey USA shows State Assemblyman Rocky Chavez, a Republican from Oceanside, has a small lead over Democrat Doug Applegate. No other candidate has double-digit support. It's a crowded field, and the poll shows 1 in 5 voters are undecided going into the June primary. Federal prosecutors have been instructed to be more aggressive in cases that involve fentanyl, a highly potent drug linked to the opioid crisis. As Matt Hoffman reports, we're starting to see some of those new cases emerge in San Diego.
U.S. Attorney Adam Braverman says when someone dies of an opioid overdose, an investigation begins.
There were roughly 70 deaths in the last 6 months of 2017. So we are going over every one of those cases with the DA's office to make a determination whether we can identify the dealer.
If dealers are found guilty, there's a mandatory 20-year minimum penalty. The CDC says fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And since March, California's Southern District has charged 3 people with distributing fentanyl causing death. Those cases still have to go to trial. Prosecutors say fentanyl regularly comes into San Diego from Mexico.
80% of the fentanyl seizures that occur along the southwest border are in our district. So this is a problem for San Diego.
In February, California's Southern District hired 2 opioid coordinators to assist with investigations.
Other U.S. attorneys are certainly considering these charges. We like to think of ourselves at the forefront of bringing these charges because it's really a problem that's acute to the southwest border.
Braverman says they're stepping up fentanyl enforcement along the southern border.
To identify those people in Mexico that are manufacturing these opioids and shipping them to San Diego, bring charges against them, and extradite them here to San Diego.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
California might enact new laws to take a more proactive approach to bullying. A bill under consideration would establish new statewide programs for schools. Teachers would get online training and identify and prevent bullying.
There have been surveys of Muslim students where over half have experienced bullying in recent years. Young girls having hijabs written off their heads, boys being pushed in the playground and in the classroom. We've heard very disturbing incidents involving LGBT students as well as immigrant students. We want to make sure that educators and teachers are doing everything they possibly can. When bullying happens between 2 students, it's not just about those 2 students. It impacts classrooms, it impacts an entire school environment, impacts what parents have to deal with at home.
Supporters of the bill say the state loses nearly $250 million every year due to absences related to bullying. School choice may be having an impact on traffic and the environment as more families choose schools farther from home. They're spending more time on the road. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks and video journalist Katie Shulov joined a Vista Unified carpool to explore the toll.
All right. Let's do this, boys.
It's a few minutes past 7 as Lana Leghart pulls her hybrid SUV out of the driveway.
Everybody buckled?
It's her day to make the 7-mile trek north to Mission Vista High School. 5 kids from the neighborhood won spots at the magnet school through a lottery. But like much of Vista Unified, there's no bus service to get them there.
Is it worth it? Is it worth the drive?
Sometimes.
The district cut school bus routes several years ago to save costs. Many students pay to take a North County Transit District bus to school, but
our closest bus stop, we just passed it. It's 1.2 miles. Is that right, you guys? I think it's 1.2 miles away from the school, and they would have to walk along this road. This is Highway 76. There are no sidewalks. And the Mission Vista handbook actually says students should not walk along Highway 76 to get to school. It's not safe.
So over the summer, Leghart and her neighbors put their heads together.
We talked about getting a 15-passenger van, putting a bunch of kids on there, and all the parents would rotate through, but where do we park the van and who pays for insurance and who's liable if there's an accident?
They researched shuttle services, no go.
Somebody researched Uber.
Again, wouldn't work.
So my friend Amanda finally sat down and figured out a spreadsheet of 5-day-a-week, morning, afternoon carpool schedule. And now I only drive twice a week, which is beautiful. It's like a dream. But somebody every morning and every afternoon has to be in that traffic.
And Leghart says that traffic has gotten bad. What should take 20 minutes can now take 45 as more and more families crisscross Vista to get to the school of their choice instead of walking to the neighborhood school.
I sat at the corner of just outside the school at the beginning of the school year, and I counted 586 cars coming out, and that wasn't even the whole traffic period. I was told that if I really wanted a true count, I should get there around 6:45 and stay until 8 o'clock. I haven't done that yet because I don't want to get to school at 6:45.
Leghart petitioned the district last year to bring back busing. The board reinstituted its transportation committee in response. It also tallied the number of middle and elementary school students who travel farther than 1.5 miles to school, 750. And tonight, it's considering a $1.2 million plan to add new routes. Superintendent Linda Kimball says that initiative is to ensure access to schools and safety. Vista has a lot of winding country roads without sidewalks.
I think equity and access are big questions and big concerns. And so we've been looking, actually I took a walk to school with parents the other day to see how far the walking radiuses were and whether there was access for a parent maybe who didn't have a vehicle and how we could right that situation.
Yeah, it's 7:23. We made great time considering we left the house at 7:05, and we are almost there. We have yet to see what the drop-off line looks like.
Leghart says she worries about something else.
The bigger concern for me is the environment.
She isn't alone. Recently, local environmentalists and lawmakers have wondered what school choice might mean for efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions. The Environmental Protection Agency looked into it in 2008 and found a 7-mile drive like Leghart's emits 6 to 9 times more carbon per capita than a bus that's carrying dozens of children.
Not too shabby, guys.
If passed, the new busing program would not serve high schools, meaning Leghart's carpool isn't done just yet.
I'm really looking forward to when Alex can drive himself.
But she says it could mean fewer people on the road and more smooth trips like today's.
See you later.
Megan Burks, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump's pick to be Secretary of State faces tough questions at his confirmation hearing. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Uber is announcing changes the company hopes will improve rider safety. In the next few weeks, the ride-hailing service will begin conducting annual criminal background checks on all drivers in the U.S. Uber is also hiring a company that will routinely monitor criminal arrest. Changes are also coming to the Uber app, including features that will quickly call 911 in an emergency and allow riders to share their locations with people they know. If you were a fan of Courtyard, the dog park event space and beer garden in the East Village, you're in luck. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser says the original park closed last summer, but is now reopening in a new vacant lot just a few blocks away.
We literally actually picked up all the shipping containers from the last location and moved it right here.
Philip Akatel has been with the project since the beginning, when he was a student at New School of Architecture and Design. He did a school project with a new idea.
The whole concept was looking at city-owned properties that were vacant, underutilised, and the city may have had plans with them, but not for the next sort of 2, 5, 10 years. So the whole question kept coming up of like, what can we do with it for now?
Their answer was a coffee shop, dog park, beer garden.
So we do live music.
Event space.
We got the big 12-foot tables.
And just an area for people to hang out.
It's even the same canopy structure.
Courtyard was open at Park Boulevard and Market Street for 2 years, but then the city decided it was time to build a high-rise on the lot. So they picked up and moved to 13th and Market. Luckily, the park's structures are made out of shipping containers. An easy relocation was the park's original concept.
And that's the beauty of being able to use these portable modular shipping containers that literally we can throw on the back of a truck, move to a new spot and start and rock and roll.
The new space is about half the size of the old one at around 11,000 square feet. But General Manager Justin Naval says he's not worried about downsizing.
I think it's actually a benefit. You know, a lot of these event spaces might be too big, and we're not really going for those huge artists. We want to try to find really quality music, and there's a lot of locals that kind of fit that void.
Courtyard has a 3-year lease on the new lot, so they'll have a little more time to settle in. Claire Tragesser, KPBS News.
The reopening celebration is Friday at 6 at the new Courtyard on 13th and Market. The Trump administration is backing off a major hike of national park fees, but it will still cost more to visit this year. Prices at all national parks will increase by $5 per vehicle, bringing the cost at more popular parks like Yosemite to $35. The Interior Department's plan to raise prices to $70 per vehicle was met by strong public opposition. Sunny, warmer weather is expected to return as we get closer to the weekend. Justin Pavic has details in tonight's forecast.
As we go throughout the next couple of days, temperatures climbing once again, but today the concern is going to be some gusty winds inland over the mountainous terrain and the deserts. And we're going to talk about some sunshine. We'll talk about those temperatures and how they'll change as we venture into next week. But again, up through the mid-evening hours, still talking about high wind warnings. We could see those winds down toward Mount Laguna topping 60 miles per hour into the range of 45 to 55 toward Borrego Springs. So that's a concern here, again, throughout the latter half of the day. And still quite gusty toward La Jolla, Oceanside, winds here out of the west, anywhere from 25 close to 30 miles per hour. But notice on the satellite and radar combo, we're not talking about precipitation. More so, it's going to be on the quiet side as there's no areas of low pressure around. In fact, we can go north to I-80 toward the Bay Area. Continued quiet. There will be some showers trickling in toward the northern portion of the state as we go throughout the latter half of the evening. As we talk about tonight, we talk about a mainly clear sky. Those winds starting to subside as well. They'll be coming down, as will the temperatures. Notice Borrego Springs 52, Mount Laguna down to 32. We talk about Chula Vista 49 degrees, Oceanside down to 41. And then on Friday, warming up as again those howling winds begin to kick their way further off toward the east. I'm going to talk about temperatures running above normal. For instance, around San Diego, should be talking about the mid-60s, around 67. Instead, around 75, and we'll match that mark at Oceanside. Ramona 77. Poway tops off at 79 degrees with lots and lots of sunshine. Check out the coast here the next couple of days. The flow turns offshore, and that will bring about the warmth. Over the weekend, we start to go onshore. That means we're going to be talking about some clouds coming back into the picture Monday and Tuesday, and temperatures coming back down into the 60s for highs. Overnight lows dropping down into the 40s. Inland, same situation, warmth over the weekend. And we talk about some cooler temperatures heading toward early next week. The winds will also kick up over the mountainous terrain as we venture our way into Monday, and that's over the desert locations as well. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Povick. Back to you, Ebony.
New technology developed by NASA might get us closer to knowing if there's a chance of life beyond our solar system. AP reporter Kathy Young takes a look at the TESS satellite and its mission into deep space.
NASA is getting ready to launch its next planet hunter. The discoveries of this little spacecraft could change our understanding of faraway worlds. The Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS for short, will search for planets outside our solar system. Scientists with MIT and NASA are working on the mission.
It is going to survey nearly the entire sky, looking at hundreds of thousands of stars, up to millions of stars, looking for new planets.
TESS will divide the sky into sections, looking at each slice for 27 days before switching to the next area. It will focus on exoplanets that orbit a star similar to how the Earth orbits the Sun.
When it is done, we will have surveyed 85% of the sky for signs of exoplanets.
TESS will look for dips in the brightness of stars, indicating planets passing in front of them. Astronomers are most interested in other planets that are similar to Earth in size and environment. A place that is not too hot and not too cold so that water can exist on the surface.
We can do follow-up measurements, such as getting the mass of the planet and looking at the atmosphere and searching for things like water vapor and even maybe signs of life on the planet.
Liftoff of the Delta II rocket with Kepler.
TESS will be building on the mission of the Kepler Space Telescope, which launched in 2009 but will soon run out of fuel. Kepler discovered about 2,600 confirmed exoplanets, but far away. TESS will spend about 2 years searching for new worlds closer to our solar system.
We want the brightest, nearest stars to find planets around them, and so they're bright enough that we can follow them up in more detail.
Future missions like the James Webb Space Telescope, set to launch in 2020, will use TESS data to look closer at the planets discovered. And scientists hope to one day send robots to those planets for further exploration. Kathy Young, Associated Press.
The state may pump more money into low-income subsidies for covered California. A bill approved this week by a state Senate committee would require California to subsidize customers who pay more than 8% of their annual household incomes on premiums. Supporters of the bill say it's necessary due to uncertainty over the Affordable Care Act at the federal level. 5 years after the Boston Marathon bombings, survivors are helping doctors make advancements in prosthetics that will improve their quality of life. AP reporter Ned Barker has the story.
5 years after a bomb at the Boston Marathon cost him one of his legs, Mark Fukerl has made steady progress. He skis and has competed in 2 hand cycle races at the Boston Marathon, but his injuries still bring him pain every day, especially in the leg that doctors were able to save.
I still question every day when and if I'm going to keep it or when I'm going to cut it off.
Medical science has made promising advances in amputations and artificial limbs since the attack, due in part to lessons learned by doctors and researchers treating survivors of the attack. 17 people lost limbs.
The gravity of the bombings and the intensity of the experience really pushed me and my colleagues and our collaborators over at MIT to start thinking about things much more in much more granular terms.
The plan will be to remove the leg below the knee.
Dr. Matthew Carty says a chief lesson of the bombing is that amputations needed to improve. With an infusion of research dollars as a result of the attack, doctors are beginning to implement new forms of amputation that could allow people to maintain better levels of mobility. At Boston's Brigham and Women's Hospital, doctors have developed a method that saves tendons that normally are severed during an amputation.
When coupled with an appropriately adapted next-generation prosthesis, will enable folks who are suffering limb loss who undergo this modified procedure to have much more exquisite control of the prosthetic limb, but also to get sensory information back.
Researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology are currently working on that next generation prosthesis that can translate brain signals into movement of an artificial leg. Doctors at Brigham and Women's Hospital are also researching leg transplants. All of this comes as the survivors of the attacks have to consider new prostheses. They generally last 5 to 7 years. Faulconer says he'll hold on to his remaining leg as long as he can tolerate the pain.
So seeing all the new advancements in technology and surgical procedures that are being tried and practiced and studied, I'm excited because it potentially could make my life better.
A better life for him and other amputees. Ned Barker, Associated Press.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The Rock Dwayne Johnson is trying to turn a classic arcade game into a movie blockbuster. Beth Accomando will have a review of Rampage, and one of the biggest weekends in music begins tomorrow. What to expect at this year's Coachella on KPBS Midday Edition. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.